Yeah, hi, I'm Max. I'm 24. I've been working in the mental health space since early 2017, so about 7, almost 8 years now. My background has been I pretty much dropped out of high school and found a pilot project as a peer worker at Headspace. So that's kind of how I started doing that. I've got a lot of passion for advocacy, especially for youth, but in particular LGBTI people, especially trans and gender diverse. I myself transitioned when I was 17, so close to when I started peer work. There was a lot happening at that age. And my role now, I'm the Consumer Partnerships Coordinator for Southeastern Sydney Local Health District Mental Health Service. So my role provides leadership and oversees the lived experience workforce, which is our peer workers, our consumer reps, our carer reps, and yeah, any other lived experience positions. I think for me, it ended up being positive, but I think because I tend to be a bit reclusive and I tend to hide away and go off the grid for moments at a time, it can be a bit hard to contact. So I found that when there was the social distancing and not being allowed out and stuff, I thought, I really enjoyed it at the beginning because I could tap out of a lot of different requirements, but then I quite quickly found a lot of gaps and where my self care was lacking. Like I realized a lot of my self care actually was the connection to other people, but I didn't really know that at the time. Like I've kind of had a lot of experiences with social anxiety and can find social interactions quite exhausting. But then I ended up doing a lot of self reflection actually in COVID, which I didn't necessarily expect. Like I was sort of reflecting on my self care strategies, how I was going to do that. I weirdly started. It sounds weirdly because it's if like a lot of people that know me know that I would not do it, but I started exercising, which I pretty much have not done for years and years, which was actually really interesting. I got a lot of benefit from that, and I know there's a lot of stuff on physical health at the moment, but I think yeah, the self reflection was around self care, and I was kind of like hit quite hard with being present with myself and being isolated and sort of not having my different kind of avoidance strategies and ways that I tend to run away from my problems a little bit were very much taken away from me. So um, yeah, I ended up getting quite unwell and having an inpatient stay in a mental health unit. And I think the one thing that was quite positive is the way that I've come out of that. I definitely am more well than I've been in years. And I actually got access to really good help. I put in a lot of energy with my support services. And I think that's a positive for me through COVID, which sounds potentially like a negative, but for me, it was a massive positive, the kind of wellness that I've gotten now and the self reflection I've been able to do. I think at the moment with mental health services and stuff, we've got our peer workers that are really thriving in our district. Like a lot of with COVID, we've had to think of contemporary ways to get support to people, to make sure people are getting the right supports when they need them. We've got our consumer reps and our lived experience workforce that are more passionate than ever that with some of the leave restrictions and how we've had to be protected through COVID have been obviously difficult for people who have been in hospitals and stuff, but there's a lot of momentum at the moment. I think a lot of people are getting re-energized and have been able to have some rest. But yeah, I think at the moment a lot of our lived experience workforce is thriving in the face of adversity, which is great. I think two tips. I think the first one was through COVID, and I think me feeling more and more unwell, I really needed friends that respected my boundaries. And I think at different times I needed to kind of be able to come in and out or kind of go off the grid for a couple of days or, kind of cancel a lot of plans at the last minute. And I really took inventory of which of my friends were always patient and always understood that. And I think looking for people who had those boundaries. I think another tip for me would be before I kind of unloaded on people how I was feeling in an event or a rant, asking them if they had space to hold that for me. I think checking in, I think if everyone's a bit upset and there's tends to be one person who's quite caring or empathetic, it can end up with them, constantly having conversations around that. So I think one of the things that I now do and a lot of my friends do is if we're going to talk about something heavy, we either do like a content warning or trigger warning, or we ask if that person's got capacity for space to hold that conversation and to be present for it. So I think that would be my tips for I think conversations and boundaries. So mental health peer work. So just to clarify, there's a difference between peer support work and peer support. So peer support is obviously when you've got two peers that are doing similar things or have similar experiences and connect on that way. Peer support work is actually like a professional discipline where basically your role is you have to have an identified lived experience of mental health concerns or distress or extreme states or however you refer to your experience, and basically your role is to work with people and support them from a place of mutuality. So from kind of, I've been in a similar position, I can understand where you're going, how you're feeling, and understanding like different things about the service and what it's like to be an inpatient or what it's like to do psychology. And I think, yeah, so basically peer work is matching up and working with people from not from a point of I know what's going on with you, but more from a point of listening and the back and forth of sharing stories. And say for example, if I was working with someone who was struggling with social anxiety, and I could talk about some of the strategies that I use, but also my experience has that how that's changed over time. Not that you need to be in a certain point of your recovery to do peer work. But yeah, so a lot of my background has been in youth peer work as well. So doing mental health and stuff with other young people. And I think for me, I always look to other young people to connect. And I always look for people who have a similar experience. Like I feel like it's one of the most natural things we do is we want to talk to someone who understands what we're about to talk about. And some of the things that we can deal with in life are very, very complex. So I think that's kind of the basis of peer work. It can look very different. So we've got peer workers that are in some community health teams. We've got some youth peer workers. We've got some like so inpatient peers. We've got peer work in heaps of different ways, and there's also peer work that's outside of mental health. Like a lot of the time with I think with cancer stuff and with paramedics, it's basically just connecting people with other people that have been through a tough situation that some people are about to enter. So there's lots of different avenues actually. So I know a lot of people that have come up through consumer advisory groups. So say for example through local headspaces, they might have some pilot projects or some headspace peer work roles. A lot of it is asking mental health services because a lot of them have peer work roles. The Mental Health Coordinating Council, I think because I'm based in Sydney, so in Sydney they do our peer work Cert 4. So that's also accessible. I think it's around a lot of I recommend linking with the mental health service because they, in some way, usually should have a pathway to peer work, and they should have peer workers involved. And I think, yeah, another part is if you've got a new peer work role, if you're looking into it, also start looking at different supports and mentors. It can be a pretty difficult position because it is the benefits for me and the challenges are the same. So it's quite meaningful, but that can also mean it's quite challenging emotionally. So I would recommend as well making sure from the very beginning, if you do get into a peer role, to very much look at your supervision and your mentoring and making sure you've got a lot of support around you.